Can you imagine the upside of Auburn's season if they pull off a win against Texas A&M?
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it's a crossover edition of Locked On Auburn and Locked On Aggies. I'm Zach Blackerby. He's Andrew Stefaniak. And we agree. We agree how important this game is in regards to shaping what I think the final standings are going to look like in the SEC in 2024, Andrew. When the Aggies come to Jordan-Hare Stadium, it's going to be late in the season. There's going to be a lot of questions that have already been answered. But there's a lot of teams vying for spots and positioning in that second tier of the SEC. And the winner of this game is going to be in a really good spot when it's all said and done.
No question there. And this is a football game. Looking at both teams, like you said, looking at both teams' schedules, you can't look at this football game and look past the importance for both clubs here. I mean, both teams. This is a game where I think for Texas A&M, the importance comes from, your road schedule is it's manageable. This is the SEC. There's no such thing as an easy schedule in this conference, but
sure.
It's manageable. And your two most challenging games on the road are Auburn and Florida. And I'm starting to buy in to Auburn, Zach. I'm starting to buy more into what's happening over at Auburn, and to where every day passes by, I get more and more concerned about this game than I was the day before. I think the Auburn Tigers are going to surprise some people this year.
And I think the way the season develops, I think could benefit Auburn. The fact that this game is played so much later, feels earlier on. I still think the fact that it's in Jordan-Hare Stadium gives Auburn a pretty big edge in this one, but I mean, we'll see. I mean, you made the comment that there's no easy schedule in the SEC, and while I agree, Ole Miss is very, very manageable this year. Props to Ole Miss, but I think both Auburn and Texas A&M and Ole Miss and a lot of these SEC West teams, I think life is going to get easier for them now in this expanded SEC where there's no SEC West and no SEC East. We're all in here together, because they're not all playing each other anymore. You're going to get more Kentuckys sprinkled in there. You're going to get more South Carolinas. Auburn's playing Vanderbilt. You absolutely love that. And to me, instead of, like for instance, Auburn is playing Vanderbilt and Kentucky when they would normally play Ole Miss, LSU, and Mississippi State.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just, it's vastly different. It's vastly different. And I think the way a team develops over the course of the season, a lot of that is correlated with wins and losses. I think the more games you win, the more likely you are to trend in a positive direction over the course of the season because you're starting to buy in.
Yeah.
And if Auburn can get wins at home against Oklahoma, if they can win on the road against Missouri or win on the road against Kentucky, to me, if they get two of those few games that we just mentioned there, they're going to be in a prime spot to take on Texas A&M and look to have 9 wins going into the Iron Bowl or 8 wins going into the Iron Bowl. I think Auburn fans will take either at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, look at Texas A&M's schedule. You say the same thing. You know who Texas A&M does not play? Alabama, Georgia, or Ole Miss. I mean, now you play Texas, obviously joining the SEC, getting that rivalry back, which should be a really fun football game. Absolutely. But I mean, you look at this, and you're right. I mean, the changing of the SEC, I do think is going to lead. It's gonna help the West teams, the former West teams. You're right. I mean, Georgia got to play Kentucky and Vandy and all these, South Carolina, these teams that just haven't been great historically.
A terrible Florida team that's been bad for the last 10 years. A Tennessee team that's been down for the last decade until 3 years ago. Yeah. I mean, it's been a joke in the SEC East.
And meanwhile, the West is beating each other up. I mean, year after year. And so this is going to benefit both of these football teams, both of these programs, I think, in a way. And it's going to make this conference just more interesting as a whole to see who's going to be able to bring this thing home every year. Is it going to lead to more wins for some of these middle of the road teams? This year, which I would put Auburn and Texas A&M both under that category. Like you said, the second tier of the conference. So looking, like I said, at this football game, you're right. I think it does benefit Auburn when it's played. I think knowing that Texas A&M is going to have to travel to Jordan-Hare Stadium to play this football game. We always say weird things happen there. I mean, if you're a SEC football fan looking, Texas A&M fans on the outside looking in, what happens there. The miracle in Jordan-Hare, the kick six. I mean, these things happen. Has a time been released for this game yet, Zach? I don't think it is.
No, I think it's flexed.
Okay. So I'm just telling you this right now. If you're a Texas A&M fan, you don't want to go there and play under the lights. You just don't want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In November too. I mean, things happen. Things happen there. And Auburn's schedule is interesting. They play their first 5 games at home, and then they don't play at Jordan-Hare Stadium during the month of October. And so a lot of these Auburn fans that buy season tickets, they're going to be hankering to get back in there, and they'll play home games before Texas A&M comes back. But I think this is going to be a fan base that's fired up, especially if the season goes the way that a lot of people are starting to think. You mentioned at the top there, more and more people are starting to sit down and actually look at Auburn and look at how favorable their schedule is compared to how it normally is, and look at all the things that they've done to help Peyton Thorne at quarterback and kind of allow him to actually have pieces, actually have weapons for him to throw the football to. I think the offensive line is going to be better than it was a year ago and wasn't bad last season. And to me, I just think Auburn, when you look at it, it's like people are finally sitting down and doing their homework and doing their research, and they're saying, oh, wait, yeah, Auburn does have a pretty clear path to 8 wins. Now, if they're going to win 8 games, you got to think Texas A&M is one of them.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, I think the meat and potatoes of this conversation is going to end up being what we talk about here in a few minutes, which is the quarterbacks. And we'll get to all that and the importance there. But what's going to be important, Zach, and we hinted at it the last time you and I talked, is going to be the trench warfare.
Yeah.
The matchup in the trenches in this football game is going to be so crucial. We talked about it last time. I am a huge believer in Texas A&M's defensive line. Sounds like you're pretty high on Auburn's offensive line. I know they went and got Percy Lewis is his name, and he's going to be a great player. I've seen him, I think, in some mock drafts. I mean, he's a good player. I think he's got a lot. He's got a bright future ahead of him. He's not played his best football yet, but when it comes, so I think that's going to be strength on strength. This is where it's going to get more interesting. So obviously, who wins the strength on strength battle? I'm personally still taking Texas A&M's defensive line. That you could have a real debate on this. We could go for an hour just on this.
Sure.
What's going to be more interesting than that is what I think could end up being either you could say weakness on weakness or question mark on question mark, which is A&M's O-line against Auburn's D-line. I know Auburn did a great job adding some pieces in the portal at the D-line, but is that going to be enough? So, I mean, like, Zach, I'd like to hear, can you convince me as to how this Auburn defensive line you think will be able to create havoc for Connor Wegman and the Texas A&M offense?
They need somebody to step up. I talked to somebody within Auburn's program last week and asked them point blank, what do you think the defensive line is going to look like? And they said, we'll see. Somebody's got to step up. He said they felt the same way this year going into the season as they did last year, where they were concerned a little bit. There was some concern within the program a year ago, but Marcus Harris played out of his mind last year. And there's a lot of folks that I've talked to within the program that say they didn't really see that coming. He didn't do that in practice, but he did it during games. And so nobody really asked any questions about it. Is Auburn going to have a guy like that? They brought in a bunch of dudes, brought in a bunch of guys via the portal, guys who have played a lot of college football. Isaiah Rakes, the former Texas A&M Aggie, is now part of this. Does he kind of step up a little bit more than normal in this game that we're talking about that's like 6 months away? Or is it, a Philip Bleedy who's played a ton of college football at Texas Tech and at Indy, or a Gage Key? I mean, there's so many different guys that Auburn's brought in on the defensive front. They need somebody to step up. Because I think a lot of the guys they brought in, they're solid. They're not great. They haven't been like playmakers at their previous spot. They've just been solid. And they need somebody to be great. They need somebody to be kind of that guy to step up and kind of maximize a potential mismatch if Texas A&M has one up to that point. I think the other huge factor in this is former Texas A&M defensive coordinator and now Auburn defensive coordinator, DJ Durkin. You got to think there's going to be a little extra bacon on this one for him. You just know he's looking forward to this game. I'm guessing that this one's going to be a little bit more emotional. It's going to mean a little bit more. Not that A&M did them wrong or anything. These are just hyper competitive people. And I'm sure that that's going to be something that he kind of focuses on. But the thing about, like, when you're talking about O-line versus D-line, is one injury to somebody's offensive line totally changes this conversation.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's impossible to predict, but if we're assuming everybody's healthy and we're talking about the true best on best, I'd probably give the slight edge to Texas A&M's offensive line just because I still have questions about Auburn's D-line.
Yeah. And, the thing about Texas A&M's offensive line, it's never been a talent problem. The same could be said for every position group on Texas A&M's roster.
That's
it's
right.
always been a development problem. You bring in a new staff that is all about development. This is what they're here to do. They're here to develop these players. We know they're X's and O's guys. We didn't know if Elko was going to be a recruiter, which ironically he has the number 5 class right now in 2025, which is, I still can't, people aren't talking enough about that he's done that quickly. But
I mean, it's probably not Elko. It's probably the ridiculous amount of money that the Texas A&M has.
But still, I mean, he was at Duke where he wasn't recruiting. I mean, they were getting 1 stars. You know what I mean? He was.
It's a different pitch for sure.
Yeah, so I'm with you. That's part of it, but I'm
different
still,
tax bracket as well.
Yeah, it's. I wasn't expecting it to go as well as it's going, despite the money. But you're right, it plays a role in it. But I think that Texas A&M's new offensive line coach, Adam Cushing, I think that he came with Elko from Duke. I believe that he is going to be able to develop this offensive line. And if he can do that, we're in our minds, we're still living in the Jimbo Fisher era. The bad man is gone. Players can get better. This can happen. Players don't have to be the same as they were the year before. Coach Cushing has proven that he can develop talent. What's to say he can't do that at Texas A&M? So I would give a barely slight edge to the Texas A&M offensive line. And I'm talking 51-49. But I think the trenches, in all honesty, it's the trenches and quarterback play where this game is going to be won, which you can say that about pretty much every game. But
if it was earlier in the season, I would say maybe the noise of Jordan-Hare Stadium impacts your snap count and your ability to communicate. But at that point of the season, once again, unless there's a major injury, everybody's going to be able to communicate, without speaking at that point of the year. So I don't think that'll play as big of a factor. Let's talk about quarterbacks. Quarterbacks are always going to be a part of this, Andrew. And so that is coming up in just a moment on this crossover edition of Locked On Auburn and Locked On Aggies. Andrew, can you imagine wagering on sports anywhere other than our friends at FanDuel?
It would be utterly, I don't have a word other than insane to go anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me mad just thinking about it.
I'm frustrated thinking about it as well.
Yeah, the fact that people go elsewhere. FanDuel has the best app. They've got more props, odds, and lines than anyone else. And look, they're sensitive to the fact that it's summer. And if you're listening to a daily Auburn or a daily Texas A&M podcast, you love sports. You love them, and there's not a whole lot of them to go around during the summer. And so right now, you know what they're doing? Do you know what they're doing right now? All summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus every single day. Every single day. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer, because Andrew, FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the MLB and the Locked On Podcast Network. I don't think there's anybody on the planet that believes in Texas A&M's quarterback play more than you. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. I have been calling. I'm the official leader of the Connor Wegman hype train.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a big deal, so
would you say that, or you're the conductor and you look back in the passenger car, how many folks are there behind you? Is it starting to fill up, you think, or is it still just kind of you and some of his family members?
Right now it's a lot of family, but people are starting to buy in,
Okay.
So someone told me the other day, and I think this is the perfect way to describe Connor Wegman. He has been described as, I love this term, I love saying it, the best kept secret in college football. And I think it's a great way to describe who Connor Wegman is right now, because he plays a couple games as true freshman season, plays a couple games last year and then gets hurt against Auburn. I forget who it was. I think it was Eugene Asante. Darn you, Eugene Asante. I'm just kidding. I remember who it was. But gets hurt against Auburn, misses the rest of the year. But he always is showing flashes. He just hasn't been able to stay on the field. And that's a big part of it. You got to stay on the field. If you can't stay on the field, it doesn't matter. But part of that is, I think, he got hurt because last year, because a player got in the backfield against Auburn. Someone got in the backfield and hit him. I mean, if you have better blocking, he's going to stay healthy, hopefully. But when you watch him play, you go to NFL mock drafts. I've heard from NFL scouts, he has first-round potential in this year's NFL draft. The NFL loves Connor Wegman, and there's a reason why. Those NFL scouts know a whole heck of a lot. You know what I mean? They look at film, and they break this all down, and they believe. And when I watch the film, he's a great player. He hasn't been able to show it yet.
Yeah, and he's going to be able to throw to an exciting new option, the 5-star from Phoenix City, Cam Coleman. Yeah. Oh, wait, he flipped. Never mind. He did. He's on Auburn's team.
That check bounce.
He's on Auburn's team for sure. No, I think that's a great point that you bring up. I mean, obviously, this is going to be the case for most of the quarterbacks Auburn plays. Yeah. I have questions about Auburn's pass rushing ability. This goes back to the defensive line discussion that we talked about a second ago. They've got a few guys that I really believe in their ability to rush the passer. Jalen McLeod, Kieron Crawford. Yeah. Kieron Crawford's a new guy that they just got from Arkansas State. And then we're all assuming Keldrick Falk, former 5-star. We're assuming his second year, he's able to take that step. Everybody I've talked to within the program believes it's going to happen. It probably will happen, but until it does, it's still a variable, right? Yeah. And to me, when you look at what Wegman is able to do, you've got to throw him off balance. And Auburn did a good job of that until he got hurt. He was
not playing well. He was not playing well in that game.
He wasn't. And it kind of makes you wonder how that game would have developed if he had stayed in, because it seemed like Auburn kind of had his number. And so does that carry over? Does that translate? Probably not, but I do think that's going to be a factor in this. But you got to make sure Wegman is uncomfortable. Auburn was able to do that a year ago. Yeah. Is their pass rush as good as it was a year ago? We'll have to see.
Yeah. And, we just got done, sitting here talking about the trenches, and it sounds bland and generic because, this game will be won in the trenches and in quarterback room. You hear that every game. But in all honesty, I think this game is really where that's going to happen. I don't look at the matchup between the receivers and the corners for each team and go, okay, here. I look at it as those two groups, trenches and quarterback, is where this game is going to be won. And, I can sit here and talk about Connor Wegman I will annoy you. We will talk about it for an hour. I can do it, maybe 2. I'm all in. I think he's going to have a great year. He's got the weapons to do it. I think Colin Klein, the new offensive coordinator who comes to Texas A&M from Kansas State, is a coach who, and I've told this, A&M fans, enjoy him now. He'll be a head coach in 2 to 3 years. So enjoy him now. He's a great, great coordinator. I think he's going to elevate this offense. Last year with, Petrino, you really didn't get. I was excited about him, but Jimbo did
not work.
Yeah, Jimbo didn't give him the keys. That was the whole offseason conversation, one of the biggest in the SEC, and he didn't let him have them. I think Coach Klein, obviously Elko's a defensive guy. It's Coach Klein's offense. He's a genius. I think it's going to go really well. But so, Zach, here's the deal. As I've said, Auburn fans, I'm coming around. I'm a believer that Auburn's gonna overachieve this year. I think that they're going to really impress some folks. But Zach, you have got to talk me in to Peyton Thorne. Can you do it? Can you talk me into Peyton Thorne?
No, but I'm not going to try to. I'm not going to try to talk you into Peyton Thorne, but I am going to try to talk you into everything that's happening around him. I mean, you mentioned Percy Lewis, the left tackle from Mississippi State that Auburn brought in to revamp that offensive line. You brought everybody else back, and you feel really, really strong about what they're able to do up front. The eye test from this spring, they look good. The O-line looks really, really good, in my opinion. They bring in Cam Coleman. They flipped him from somewhere. Where was it? Oh, it was Texas A&M. Yeah, they flipped him, the best receiver ever in the class, and he was exceptional throughout spring. Stole the show at Auburn's 8A game. They go out and get Keandre Lambert-Smith, who was kind of the number 2 guy at Penn State. They go out and get Robert Lewis, who was the number 1 guy at Georgia State, who probably flying under the radar a little bit from what he was able to do this spring. He quietly had the most catches in Auburn's 8A game. I think he's going to be a big part of what they do. And they brought back their running back room. Jarquez Hunter could be a player in the NFL. He chose to come back for another season. And Jeremiah Cobb and Damari Austin kind of are going to be the number 2 and the number 3 backs in no particular order in that room. And so to me, I don't think it's about Peyton Thorne. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what Hugh Freeze and this Auburn staff chose to do. I think they looked around in the portal and they said it's more effective to get the pieces around him to make playing quarterback easier at Auburn than it is to just go out and get a new quarterback. And to me, I think that was the right decision. But they've got to execute. Oh, yeah, and also Hugh Freeze is calling plays now, not Philip Montgomery, who was terrible. He was absolutely awful. So to me, I'm not going to sell you on Peyton Thorne because I don't need to. I need to sell you about everything else.
Yeah, and, I'll tell you this. I feel a lot better, unfortunately, about Auburn's receiver room than I do A&M's. And this is a conversation.
Is it because of Cam Coleman? Because he was committed. I can't stress this enough. He was committed to Texas A&M.
Okay, yeah, I remember that. That's
and he flipped.
Yes,
and he flipped from Texas A&M to Auburn. I just need to really drive that home.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right, that's gonna do it for today. We'll see y'all later. But it's all kidding. Looking at Cam Coleman and at this room, Texas A&M's receiver room. Like my listeners over at Locked On Aggies, the everydayers, y'all are gonna yell at me for my thoughts on this because people disagree with me on this, on my take on the wide receiver room. I think you have a lot of wide receiver 2s. I don't think you have that guy. And I think that's so valuable. I really do. I think having the guy.
Well, and I think that's why Cam Coleman's the difference maker. Auburn's in a similar situation. They've got a lot of wide receiver 2s, but then Cam Coleman comes through the door because he flipped. Once again, he flipped from Texas A&M to Auburn.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. But I mean,
all these Aggie fans celebrating July 4th a year ago.
Yeah.
Yay, Cam Coleman.
Yeah, I made fun of you. I deserve this. I made fun of you on the 4th of July last year, so I deserve this.
That's fine. That's fine. I wasn't going to bring it up, but it just keeps propping its way in. All right, who's going to win this game when it's all said and done? Way too early predictions coming up. We all agree how important this game is. There's no question. I've made the case it's the second biggest game on Auburn's schedule. I think it's Oklahoma 1. Yeah. And then in the context of Auburn needing to overachieve, FanDuel has Auburn's win total at 7.5. If they're going to do that, they need to either beat Oklahoma or Texas A&M. Obviously, if you beat both of them, that gives you a lot of wiggle room, both at home, different points of the year. To me, I think it's more likely for them to beat Texas A&M than Oklahoma. A lot of that has to do with just gut feeling. And I think Oklahoma's a better team than Texas A&M. And I know you're high on quarterback play and all of that, but I just think the upside of what Oklahoma has is better. I just don't know if it's going to fully be meshed by week 5 when they come to Jordan-Hare Stadium. It's their first road game. It's their first road game in the SEC. They've got a new offensive line. So there's a lot of variables there. I think Auburn beats Texas A&M. I do think it's close. I don't think it's a high-scoring game. I think both defenses are going to come with a purpose in this one. But my way too early prediction, I think Auburn wins this game 24-17, kind of in that range. That's my gut feeling, Andrew.
Yeah. The thing about Texas A&M, my honest take here on this, I don't think a lot of people, nationally even, people don't know what this team's going to be yet. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I mean, you lose like a million dudes in the portal. You bring in a ton of guys. You hold on, I don't know, maybe 30% of the you held on to some players, but not a lot. And you're refilling this thing with a lot of portal players, similar to what, Auburn probably had to do last year when Hugh Freeze took over. And that's just part of coaching change. But I think that Texas A&M is going to surprise some people. I really do. I mean, you talk about win total, the win total for
what A&M. What does it take to surprise people? What does that mean?
I think I've said it, and people and Auburn fans, y'all are going to laugh, and that's fair, and I can accept that. I think Texas A&M is going to win 9 football games this year, and people are really not going to like that.
That's wild. Let's go through this. Let's go through this. Notre Dame, that's a loss.
Right? I break the schedule down a little differently. Is how I do it.
I'm just going in order here.
Okay,
I'm just going in order here. Notre Dame, win or lose.
I think that I'm going to say loss, but
I agree.
Yeah,
McNeese, win. Florida, win.
Yeah, agreed.
Bowling Green, yes. Arkansas, yes. Missouri.
I think Texas A&M beats Missouri. I think they're going to be a little bit overrated.
That's 5. Mississippi State, 6.
Yeah.
LSU.
I think they go 1-1 against Texas and LSU. Or I think they win one of those games, either one. So
okay, so I'll give you the win for LSU. So that's we're at 6.
Yeah, I think that's 7, right? 7. Okay,
South Carolina.
I think 8. They win that game.
New Mexico State. 9.
9.
Wow. I thought y'all scheduled tougher than that.
No, and that's my whole. I'm glad you did that because I knew Auburn fans were going to laugh when I said that. It's a manageable schedule.
Super manageable. 100%.
Your 2 hardest road games are Auburn and Florida. I think you beat Florida. I think Auburn. I think it's as close as 50-50 as you can get. It really is. And then you play all of your most challenging games in front of one of the best atmospheres in college football. 110,000 people there.
What do you think the dynamic of, okay, they play Auburn on November 23rd on the road.
Yeah.
With you finally get a chance to play Texas again at home the week after. How does that come into play?
I almost commented on that a minute ago, and then I got racing on other things.
Sure. You think about Cam Coleman. I get it.
You can't act like that's not going to be in the back of their heads. You can't.
I agree.
You can't sit here and convince me it won't be. Anybody that, if you've played any sport, baseball, football, basketball, soccer, whatever you play, you have a rivalry game going up, it's always in your head. Everybody, it's just reality. I think that's going to play more of a role than people are discussing. I do. But once again, the route to 9 wins, you can lose to Auburn. You just have to go 2-2 against Notre Dame, Texas, LSU, and Missouri, which I think is more doable all at home than people are giving it credit for.
I'm not going to push back against that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to push back against that at all.
And then, okay, you go 1-3 in those games, and you beat Auburn and Florida and take care of business against South Carolina and Arkansas. That's your route to 9-3 as well. So you either go, 2-2 in those games.
Well, for the Auburn folks listening, this should fire you up because you're going to get, if that happens, you're going to get a ranked Texas A&M in Jordan-Hare Stadium on November 23rd. And that's that. Especially with, I think a similar thing's going to happen with Oklahoma, where they might be a little higher ranked than what they actually are. And that's a prime opportunity to make a statement. That's especially if you're in the ballpark of, the section of the fan base that thinks if you go 9-3 with losses to Alabama, Georgia, and a road game against Missouri, all 3 of those would be road games, but you have wins over a ranked Oklahoma and a ranked Texas A&M. Does that put you in the CFP discussion? It's just interesting. It's just,
I think 9-3 is going to get a team or 2 in the playoff. I really do. If you look at the numbers now, not pushback's the wrong word to say. I'm going to push back, but it's more, you could have the same conversation because the Iron Bowl is after this game too, right?
I think it's going to be a factor. I think it's going to be a factor. I do think there's going to be more pressure on Texas A&M hosting Texas for the first. I mean, it's been years since they've played, right?
The SEC. So what, 2012, whenever it was when they.
So that's going to be. I mean, that's a bigger deal. I think probably there's some more pressure 100%. There than Auburn going to the Iron Bowl, to Tuscaloosa for the Iron Bowl, but we'll see. We'll see. All right, Andrew. For the Auburn folks watching, if they want more Aggie stuff, where do they go?
Yeah, check out at Locked On Aggies, anywhere you get your podcast on YouTube, free and available wherever you find it. Zach, this is a big one. You and I are going to break this one down a lot more, I figure.
Yeah, no question. Auburn fans, go to his channel and let him know how fun it is to watch Cam Coleman. I think that'll be great. Hey, Auburn folks, please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been a crossover edition for Locked On Auburn and Locked On